May I have a kind attention, please?
मंडल गैंगटॉक
अभी आज आज देश का मेहमान अनिर्बान गांगुली जी Today, in this August gathering, we have with us Dr. Anirban Ganguly ji, Chairman and Sikkim Legislative Assembly, here Baba Sahab, here with us, and we have Sri Blade to welcome our guest in the dais with offering of flowers, bouquet, and karas for which electoral politics is represents heart and manner that represents a change in global dynamics.
सम्पूर्ण सिनियर कार्यकर्ता सबैलाई आजको जुन वान नेसन वान इलेक्सन का जुन सेमिनार छ यस सेमिनारमा उपस्थित हुनुभएका सम्पूर्ण महानुभाव आदरणीय वृन्दहरूलाई मेरो सम्पूर्ण तर्फबाट मेरो आफ्नो व्यक्तिगत तर्फबाट यस सेमिनारको तर्फबाट हार्दिक स्वागत तथा न्यानो अभिवादन व्यक्त गर्दै छोटकरीमा मेरो सम्भाषण लिइराख्ने अनुमति चाहन्छु। धन्यवाद।
कन्भेनर वान नेसन वान इलेक्सन्स साङ्गेका भोटियालाई आफ्नो मन्तव्य राखिदिन साधारण अनुरोध गर्छु।
सबैजनालाई गुड मर्निङ भन्न चाहन्छु। वान नेसन वान इलेक्सनको तर्फबाट आज यहाँ सिक्किममा पहिलोचोटि वान नेसन वान इलेक्सनको एउटा सेमिनार आज हामीले आयोजित गरिरहेका छौँ। यहाँ some of you might be wondering what is one nation one election, what are they doing, who are they भनेर तपाईहरुको एउटा प्रश्न पनि होला है। आज तपाईलाई म छोटकरीमा in short in brief I'll explain to you what is one nation one election and who are one nation and one election. Firstly, one nation one election, as the sentence says, one nation one election means simultaneous election of Lok Sabha, assembly constituencies plus local bodies. Yo brief ma तपाईलाई मैले explain गरेको, this is one nation one election. अब यो सेमिनार कसले अर्गनाइज गर्दैछ भन्दा who are organizing this seminar भन्दाखेरि one nation one election को एउटा कम्युनिटीले यो सेमिनार अर्गनाइज गरेको हो। Who are one nation one election? म सिक्किम को कम्युनिटी one nation one election को म कन्भेनर हो है। आज मसँग हाम्रो कीनोट स्पिकर है हुनुहुन्छ, उहाँ चाहिँ हाम्रो one nation one election को तपाईले भन्नु पर्यो भने पनि नेशनल स्पोक्सपर्सन भन्दाखेरि पनि हुन्छ। को one nation one election community भन्दाखेरि we are a group of like-minded people which is spread across India. बुझ्नुहोस् है, we are a group of like-minded people which is spread across India who thinks and who believes one nation and one election is essential for growth of our country. अब यसको I will not go in depth of कसरी चाहिँ है यसले हाम्रो कन्ट्रीलाई सपोर्ट गर्छ र कसरी सपोर्ट गर्छ म इन डेप्थमा जान्दिन। यसको लागि हाम्रो कीनोट स्पिकरले आई थिंक विल टच इन्टु इट हाउ इन्डिया विल प्रोग्रेस जब हामीले one nation one election इम्प्लिमेन्ट गर्यो भने है। त्यो भन्दै आजको हाम्रो कीनोट स्पिकर हुनुहुन्छ, हामीसँग आज हाम्रो माझमा हुनुहुन्छ, हिज नेम इज Dr. Anirban Ganguly ji. Now I'll give you a brief introduction of who is Ganguly ji. Yeah, very brief. As he said, very briefly, he is chairman and trustee of Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee Research Foundation, a think tank based in New Delhi. Right? From ideological and political issues to public policies to foreign and internal security, defense issues to climate change and rivers. यो सबै इश्यूजहरु Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee Foundation Research ले चाहिँ हेर्छ है। बुझ्नुहोस् है तपाईहरुले। So this is a very big think tank. Plus, Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee Research Foundation को थ्रूबाट Mr. Ganguly has represented India in several countries. म एक दुईवटा कन्ट्रीजको नाम मात्रै भन्छु। जुन चाहिँमा रसिया छ, फ्रान्स छ, जर्मनी छ, सिङ्गापुर छ, बेल्जियम छ, भियतनाम छ, जापान, स्पेन, the list goes on and on. Right? And lastly, Dr. Ganguly is also an author. Right? He has edited and co-edited. There are numerous books which he have authored, co-edited and edited. I'll just name few of them. Those are from partition to progress, persecuted Hindus and struggle for citizenship in 2024. Another one is Upendranath Banerjee, Memoirs of Revolutionary 2023. Aako cha tapaiko The Master, Sri Aurobindo and the Quest for National Education 2023 त्यो पनि आएको छ श्यामा प्रसाद मुखर्जी His Vision and Education 2017 अझै धेरै छ but the last one I would like to see in front of you is Swami Vivekananda Buddha and Buddhism 2014. So these are some of the books that he have authored, edited and co-edited, right? And the lastly to conclude, right? India is a democracy. We are people, right? We are a community who advocates one nation and one election. But today, we are not here to impose any ideas upon you. Right? We are not here to impose any ideas on you. India, since I said earlier, India is a democracy. All of you, right, has an individual right to decide what is right and what is wrong. We are not here to impose any ideas on you. So, to conclude, I will urge all the representatives present here today to listen to this seminar with an open mind, without any prejudice, right, and without any biases. Thank you so much.
National domain, what's happening in regards to one nation, one election, what is the future course of action, and how we should proceed for achieving our Viksit Bharat goals, and what is the role played by one nation, one election in culminating every progressive ideas and foresights together. So, I'd like to welcome Dr. Anirban Ganguly, Chairman and Trustee of Dr. Shyam Prasad Mukherjee Research Foundation, here with us to present his idea and keynote address. Thank you.
सबको नमस्कार और मैं विशेष करके आप सबको धन्यवाद देना चाहता हूँ हमारे विशिष्ट अधिवक्ता श्री और हमारे गार्जियन यहाँ हमारे गार्जियन सिक्किम श्री B.R. थापा जी वरिष्ठ पत्रकार और प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ प्रेस क्लब ऑफ सिक्किम श्री भीम रावत जी और मेरे मित्र पेम्पो लेप्चा जी और कन्वीनर ऑफ वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन मेरे युवा मित्र सांगे जी, आपको और आपके पूरे टीम को यहाँ जो सारे जो रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स हैं आपके टीम में, आप सबको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद और आभार प्रकट करता हूँ. I express my deep gratitude for organizing this program at quite a short notice, I believe, but so well done, so well laid out, so well planned, and the ambience itself, जैसे आपने भी कहा, this is an attempt to encourage and generate discussion, and so this ambience itself is an ambience which encourages discussion, which encourages debate, which encourages a certain openness to new ideas. इसलिए आप लोगों को बहुत धन्यवाद फिर से मैं देना चाहता हूँ. मेरा हिंदी इतना अच्छा नहीं है, इसलिए मैं हिंदी में नहीं कोशिश करूंगा. आपको बगल में पश्चिम बंगाल है और वहाँ कुछ ऐसे व्यक्ति हिंदी में बोलते रहते हैं, उनका हिंदी समझ में नहीं आता है. मेरा हिंदी तो उनसे बेहतर है, पर फिर भी मैं कोशिश नहीं करूंगा हिंदी में बोलने के लिए. I would speak in English, but I can assure you that I am completely decolonized. I can speak various Indian languages. The uniqueness of our country is that we are a multilingual country. All languages are national languages. Indian by nature is multilingual, which is again unique distinction in across the world. Now, you see, I am most happy because we have such a young audience here, and especially my young friends from the university, from the various colleges, We were also in universities and colleges. We were also young once upon a time. So it's always wonderful to have such an audience here. Primarily because when we are discussing one nation, one election, it is about the future of the country. It is about the future of India. It is about your future. Now you may be aware that Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi, has often used one terminology very earnestly and with a lot of conviction, and that is Amrit Kal. So the next 25 years, when India will, at the end of 25 years, when India celebrates the centenary of her freedom and independence, 2047, this period of 25 years, he designates, he terms as Amrit Kal. And he says that it is you, my young friends, students, scholars, researchers, in university and colleges, it is you who are in the next 25 years going to shape yourself, going to train yourself, going to equip yourself, and India post 2047. It is you who will give leadership to that India post 2047. And it is in this Amrit Kal that he has set the goal of Vikasit Bharat, a developed India, no more a developing country or a developing India. So we lay the foundations of a developed India, and it is you who are going to lead that developed India, Vikasit Bharat. So I would also urge you, as we take forward this discussion across the country on one nation, one election, I would also urge you to imagine yourselves as to what is it that you want to be. How do you see yourself 25 years hence? All of us would be mostly in retirement. We would be writing our memoirs, doing something else. But it is you who will be leading this country. So how do you see yourself? And it is against that backdrop that this discussion is extremely important. Now, I'll take you through certain facts and figures, certain points. And I would urge all of you, I would first urge two things. One is, please read, if you have the time, if you have the energy, please read the 322-page report of the high-level committee on one nation, one election, simultaneous election, chaired by Sri Ramnath Kovind, former President of India, and incidentally he was also chairman of Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee Research Foundation, and I had the good fortune of working very closely with him. We had also Sri Arun Jaitley as our chair, and he was one of the early proponents of simultaneous election. And I mentioned it the other day also, if Sri Arun Jaitley was present here as a legal luminary, I am not talking about him as a political leader, as a legal luminary, I think it would have been a feast listening to him. So please download the 322-page report of the high-level committee. Usually in this country, some people are there, ban a book. Ban the book. If you ask them, have you read the book? No, we want it banned. We have not read the book. So please read the book and then say whether it should be banned or not, because that is actually an authentic intellectual exercise, and we are all gathered here today as informed citizens who want to engage into an informed debate. So the first step for an informed debate is to do research, is to have your facts and figures, is to have your documents, is to read them, and then you form your opinion. So first is that. Second is, please differentiate between allegation and criticism. You must have heard Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi's podcast. It was a very interesting podcast, and there he made many points. One of the points he made is, please make a differentiate between allegation and criticism. Oh, one nation, one election is going to lead to Modi becoming a dictator. Allegation. One nation, one election is going to be domination of one party. Allegation. One nation, one election is going to finish our regional parties. Allegation. Bring up criticism. Come up with your criticisms. And these criticisms can only come if you are informed. If you have gone through the documents, if you have gone through all the opinions that are being generated and that will be generated, and then you form your opinion. When I was reading Delhi yesterday, somebody told me something very interesting. Said that, oh, you are going to Sikkim, one nation, one election. तो सिक्किम में तो one nation, one election है ही. तो आप क्यों जा रहे हैं वहाँ? मैं तो उड़ीसा में भी one nation, one election था. इसलिए जा रहे हैं क्योंकि हमारे सामने उदाहरण है. हमारे सामने उदाहरण है. और जहां वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन है, वहां के लोग का क्या ओपिनियन है, वो कैसे वो ओपिनियन डिश आउट करते हैं, दैट इज ऑल्सो इंपॉर्टेंट. नाउ we have some time, Sanjay, we have some time. Yes. So I'll just go very gradually, and I want you to remember that I am not an expert. I'm not like Thapaji, I'm not a legal luminary. I don't have a law background. I'm just a very ordinary researcher and a scholar. And I have also had the distinction of being in public life and of also contesting elections. And I've seen what that means. And I've also feeling what election fatigue means. You contest one election and then 1.5 years later you have another election. In between you have a panchayat election. In between that you have a municipal election. Your panchayat election is coming next year. So which means you have to again get worked up. You have to again go for that campaign. You have to again start strategizing, which only means that 1 month, 1.5 months, 2 months, nothing else. Anyway, we'll come to that later. Now, I'll go from the present to the past. Just a few points that I want to make. Now, if you recall in January 2025, while addressing NCC cadets in Delhi, Prime Minister Modi said, one nation, one election is not just a legal reform. It is a movement for new India. Young minds like you must engage in this discussion, as you are the future leaders who will shape India's democracy. The Union Cabinet in September 2024, while passing giving the approval for one nation, one election, said the approval of one nation, one election is a historic step towards making India's democracy more vibrant and participative. It will reduce election-related disruptions and bring stability to governance. Now, I go back further. And if you see in December 2023, Prime Minister Modi gave an interview to a channel, and he said there that India's goal is of a $5 trillion economy. Every election costs India thousands of crores. Imagine the resources we can save and utilize for development if we conduct elections together. This is about smart governance and fiscal responsibility. Now I go back further, 15th August 2023, from the ramparts of the Red Fort, Prime Minister Modi says, one nation, one election is not just a matter of debate, but a necessity for Vikasit Bharat. A synchronized election system will free governance from continuous election cycles, ensuring that leaders focus on policy making rather than constant campaigning. An elected representative to the Lok Sabha has a constituency. The constituency that I contested from in 2024 had 20 lakh voters. A constituency of that size of 20 lakh voters. Now the person, the elected representative, wins from Lok Sabha. After winning, within 2 months, elections are declared in some other states, he is sent for campaign. He is there for 2 months, 3 months campaign. He can be a star campaigner. What happens to his constituency? Election is over, he comes back for 3 months, again there is election in another state, he goes, there is a star campaigner. The party sends him, he cannot say that I will not go. what happens to his Lok Sabha constituency? He has 20 lakh people to connect to, he has 20 lakh people to cater to, and various challenges in Lok Sabhas of that size. For that matter, in any constituency there are challenges. Population pressures, various challenges, balancing federal and state. So, does he have the energy to continuously engage with his constituents as well as do campaigning? Anyway, we'll come to that point. Now, I go back further. In 2020, November 2020, addressing the All India Presiding Officers Conference in Gujarat, Prime Minister Modi said, India had, now this is a very important point, India had simultaneous elections in the past and it worked efficiently. The time has come to bring this system back for a more stable and developed democracy. Electoral reforms must ensure that governance is not hindered by continuous election cycles. Please remember, 1951-52, December 1951 to January 52 was the first general election. And from 1951-52 to 1967, this country had simultaneous elections. So it is not that it is something which suddenly Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi woke up one day and decided and imagined that we should have simultaneous election. For nearly 2.5 decades, this country, and especially the first two most challenging decades. And please remember that Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee founded the Janasangh. The Janasangh was founded in October 1951. Why I am giving you this example is that the political lineage that Prime Minister Modi belongs to is a lineage which spent 50 years in the opposition. And for 50 years in the opposition, that lineage did not question the voting structure, it did not question the election commission. Every time it lost, it did not say that the election process was flawed. It accepted the verdict of people. The Janasangh got just a little more than 3% vote, and it was recognized as a national political party. In 1951, October, the Janasangh was formed, and in December it went into election. And in spite of that, it got 3% vote. And for the next 50 years, whether it was the Janasangh or whether it was the BJP, in every election it increased its vote share. So, and it increased its vote share, it contested election for 2 decades when there was simultaneous election. There was no problem with the system then. So if there is a genuine debate and attempt to bring back that system, to examine that system in the context of today, to say that the system never existed, it is a new idea, I think it doesn't bear scrutiny of history. In 2018, there was an all-parliamentary meet that was called. And in that parliamentary meet, again, Prime Minister Modi said, frequent elections disrupt governance and developmental activities. Imagine the amount of time, money, resources spent on separate elections. We must seriously discuss one nation, one election for what? For a stronger democracy. So friends, I just took you back. I took you back from 2025 to 2018. Nearly 8 years, 9 years, when this debate has been continuously happening, when references to this has been continuously made at all forums. You see at NCC cadets addressing NCC cadets, addressing presiding officers, addressing the industry leaders, and addressing all party meetings, this issue has been consistently brought up. Now, if you go back further, as I said, because it is very important to understand the historical context. It is only when we understand the historical context, and all this is there in the open domain. You can do your own research, my young friends, especially those of you who are interested in political science, who want to take up a career in political science research, governance and public policy, you can do this research. Now, as I mentioned, I will quickly take you through a relook at phases of history. Post-independence 51 to 67, India conducted simultaneous elections. 1. 1960 onwards, separate elections began due to new states and crumbling governments. Please remember that article imposition of President's Rule, Article 356, had also a major role to break the balance. And also let us remember that these first 2 decades, the opposition in India played a major role for the republic's stability. In the first general elections, the combined opposition vote was more than the vote polled by the Congress, percentage of vote. And Dr. Shama Prasad Mukherjee was considered to be the undeclared leader of opposition. 1967, the last simultaneous elections took place. The Congress lost in a number of states and coalition governments emerged in a number of states, the Jana Sangh and other parties. As soon as coalition governments emerged in a number of states, these coalition governments were targeted and they were also dismissed. It is part of our political history. You can read Rajni Kothari, you can read many a number of other authors who will give you an exact insight into what happened in 1967. The dominance of one party broke and frequent dismissal of state governments took place. 1983, now this is a very important point. In 1983, the Election Commission of India revived, in 1983, it revived the idea of simultaneous poll. The Election Commission of India in 1983 said we should relook at the proposal of simultaneous, at the structure of simultaneous poll. And in 1984, most of you must have been in your previous incarnation. And I remember I was in class, I was just 8 years old. I was still, going around and looking at birds and butterflies and all that. 1984, the BJP promised reinstating one nation, one election. If you look at the BJP's manifesto, it is not a new idea. If you look at the manifesto, it gave a number of suggestions. It gave nearly 11 suggestions for electoral reforms. And in that, point number 6, hold state and central elections simultaneously every 5 years. Among the suggestions also was this: give the right of vote to all those above 18. Introduce identity card for voters. Number 3, use electronic voting machines. And to this end, make necessary changes in the election law. In 1984, simultaneous election. It is talking about issuing voter ID card. It is talking about using EVMs. It is talking about giving voting rights to above 18. So it is nothing new. In 1999, the Law Commission's report, the Law Commission at that time headed by Justice B.P. Jeevan Reddy, advocated simultaneous election. In 2015, Parliamentary Standing Committee report favored simultaneous election. And if you see, the Parliamentary Standing Committee was at that time headed and chaired by Congress Member of Parliament E.M. Sudarshana Nachiyappan. And it advocated simultaneous election. 2015, the Parliamentary Standing Committee said, the committee noted that the holding of simultaneous elections to Lok Sabha and state assemblies would reduce, 1, the massive expenditure that is currently incurred for the conduct of separate elections, 2, the policy paralysis that results from the imposition of the model code of conduct during elections. You know what happens when there is a model code of conduct? There is a prolonged model code of conduct. This time the Lok Sabha elections were for 3 months. And in some constituencies, some candidates had to campaign for 3 months. Because their name was announced in the first list, and the elections, the voting took place at the end, on the last day. So for 3 months, and for 3 months you have to live under the model code of conduct. All over the country the model code of conduct is there. Some variations are there, peaceful. But overall it is model code of conduct. You can't make appointments. The other day I was addressing a university gathering. The principal there said, he said that we could not take any appointments. Appointments are delayed. Schemes are delayed. Sanctions are delayed. There is a policy paralysis. There is a paralysis of governance because of the model code of conduct. So, the Parliamentary Standing Committee in its point number 3 says impact on delivery of essential services. And number 4, burden on crucial manpower that is deployed during the election time. Huge displacement of teachers. School buildings are occupied. Government servants are delinked from their daily responsibilities and duties and sent off. Schools are closed. Security forces are pulled across from various regions and deployed for election purposes. From the border, from sensitive zones, for 3 months there is a continuous movement of security forces all across the country. There is fatigue which comes in. So, crucial manpower that is deployed repeatedly during elections are therefore divested and diverted from their actual primary duty. And this we are not saying. This is the Parliamentary Standing Committee, headed by Congress Member of Parliament Sudarshan Achiyappan, made a very valid point. In 2019, the all-party meeting organized by the NDA government on One Nation, One Election. September 2023, the high-level committee was formed. March 2024, the high-level committee gave its report after 6 months of consultation. And in December 2024, the bill was reintroduced in Parliament. So I just wanted to run you through the background and the history. Now, what I'll do is I'll come back to the micro details a little later. But let us have a look at this. The high-level committee headed by Ramnath Kovind, 83% of the online feedback that it received, 83% were in agreement on One Nation, One Election. 50% of the political parties consulted agreed on One Nation, One Election. 100% former Supreme Court judges consulted, agreed. 75% former Chief Justices of High Court consulted, agreed. 100% former Chief Election Commissioners of India consulted, agreed. 87% plus State Election Commissioners consulted, agreed. Bar Council of India agreed. ASSOCHAM agreed. CII agreed. FICCI agreed. So one cannot say that the 322 pages document was done just in the air, that there was no consultation. And for those of you who are educationists here, you know the National Education Policy. The National Education Policy also was formulated in the same manner. There was a consultation right from the grassroots upward. Stakeholders were consulted, educationists were consulted, elected representatives from Panchayat to Parliament was consulted. So I think the intention cannot be doubted, because this is the kind of consultative exercise over 191 days that the Ramnath Kovind committee took place, that the committee took, initiated. Now, in 2019, I mentioned to you about the Parliamentary Standing Committee of 2015. In 2019, senior leader Sharad Pawar acknowledged in a letter to Union Parliamentary Affairs Minister Prahlad Joshi that the idea of One Nation, One Election is a good one. Late Kalagnar Karunanidhi, in his autobiography, writes that constant elections were leading to policy paralysis, and yet today his party is opposing One Nation, One Election. I'm sure Kalagnar, being 50 years in public life, had a better understanding of many things. Whether you agreed with him or not, that's a separate issue. But as a public personality, as a towering intellectual, he was someone, and as a seven-time Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, I'm sure he had a better understanding of the system than many. Now, let us look at some of the details of the Ramnath Kovind committee, and then we'll come back to some other points. Now, please remember that in the last 7 decades, this country has witnessed, has participated, has contested in nearly 400 elections in the last 75 years. 400 elections. So I think when a country has contested, participated in 400 elections, it is not only emerging as a model of electoral democracy and structure across the world, but it surely entails to have vigorous debates on the electoral process. We have given unto ourselves that right and that capacity to discuss and debate elections. Now, as I said, that 80% of the respondents agreed, 191 days took place, registered political parties were consulted, former CJIs were consulted, former CECs were consulted, High Court judges were consulted, economists were consulted, Bar Council of India, FICCI, ASSOCHAM, all were consulted. And not only the not only the big states. This consultative committee also went around all corners of the country, Andaman, Nicobar, Lakshadweep, Nagaland, Dadar and Nagar Haveli. And the highest responses were received from Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Kerala, West Bengal, Gujarat and Uttar Pradesh. And in-depth research and analysis also took place. And an alternative enabling framework was suggested by the committee. Separate elections, what the committee says, is waste of resources, and as we discussed, policy paralysis, and a huge socio-economic burden, and it leads to voter fatigue. You tell me, many of us have experienced voter fatigue sometime or the other. फिर से जाकर वोट करना है कि अभी तो किया, अरे चलो इसको छोड़ देते, आगे वाला इलेक्शन में करेंगे, क्या फिर से लाइन में खड़ा हो, छोड़ दो. And this repeated voter fatigue which comes in is what then dilutes the actual mandate, the actual opinion and will. Baba Saheb Dr. Ambedkar, please look at his debates once the constitution was ready and was placed before the house. And he says what matters is the quality and the type and the texture of the government that you form. Elections are important, there is no doubt. But those elections must enable you to select the best performing government. On that there can be no compromise. And simultaneous election, please remember, was completely passed by the Constituent Assembly of whose member were people like Sardar Patel, Baba Saheb Ambedkar, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, K.M. Munshi, Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, and everyone across the political spectrum were part of that Constituent Assembly which had endorsed simultaneous election. Experts say that simultaneous election will not be anti-democratic, anti-federal, will not violate the basic structure of the constitution. The argument that it will violate the basic structure of the constitution, I don't know how it stands scrutiny, because there is no question of if simultaneous election were to violate the basic structure of election, then it would have been violated in 1951, till 67. The basic structure of the constitution based on freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of action, secularism, everything stands. That has nothing got to do with simultaneous election. And in fact, the first amendment, if you were to see the first amendment that was brought in in 1951 to curtail free speech and free expression. That was the first assault on the basic structure of the constitution, and it was resolutely opposed by Shyama Prasad Mukherjee. It was opposed by 70 members of parliament from within the Congress parliamentary party. And the then Prime Minister was compelled to bring in the word reasonable restriction. So therefore, to say that it will violate the basic structure of the constitution, I don't think any palpable and solid argument has been put forward till now. One argument is that simultaneous election will encourage voters to participate in larger numbers because it will reduce voter fatigue. Once in 5 years, you all go out and vote because you know this is your duty which comes once in 5 years. You don't postpone it for the next election. You don't say, okay, I'm not going to vote, I'm not here, I'm not there, I'll vote for the next election. Now, frequent elections, the committee says, leads to uncertainty, slows down government machinery, and half the time of 5 years is spent in election. You come to power, and then again the next election, you are again campaigning. There is another very crucial point that people like us, for us, we notice in other states. The movement of migrant voters or migrant workers. Every time an election takes place, major election takes place, even a panchayat election takes place, you have migrant workers going back to their home state to vote and then come back. How many times do you want them to move around? Because they go spending their scarce resources, their money. So they go and vote for the assembly elections and then again come back. Again they have to go for Lok Sabha, again come back. Again they realize panchayat because they live in a village, so it's very important for them to vote in the panchayat elections. So they go back again for panchayat elections. Huge displacement of migrant workers leads to disruption in industrial production, and that is what the industry bodies say. Simultaneous election, make it once, this huge movement will not take place. Most electoral rolls, now this is a very important point. The electoral roll is prepared by the State Election Commission with the help of the Election Commission. You have one epic number and you have one electoral roll. So the question of saying that you will have fake electoral rolls, fake voting IDs, the responsibilities of the State Election Commissions. Because it is the State Election Commissioner which prepares and finalizes the roll. Once election, once a year, and once in 5 years, will enable you to streamline the voters list, will enable you to make your epic number more effective, and will actually ensure that there is no dilution in the voters list and in the voting pattern. Now, there are certain frequent issues which come up, but when we talk about the amount that will be saved, I'm sure students from commerce and economics and finance backgrounds will be able to do it better. But broadly, if you look at this, in 2024 Lok Sabha elections alone, more than 1 lakh crore was spent. And this reflects a significant pressure on the national economy, on the national finances. And if the election takes place once in every 5 years, the Election Commission of India would need to deploy resources only once. The deployment of manpower would be only once. The requisition of other services will need to be made only once. And this, broad computations say, would lead to a savings of 12,000 crores. And the high-level committee says, if simultaneous elections had been implemented in 2024, hypothetically speaking, it could have increased the GDP growth by 1.5 percentage points, adding 4.5 lakh crore to the economy. This is the economic part. Again, if you look back, if you look at elections in the past, where in states simultaneous elections have taken place, in 1999 in Karnataka, in Kerala in 1977, and in other states, you can make a study. Simultaneous election has seen greater voter turnout, has seen larger voter turnout. And if you look at why this larger voter turnout, because the fatigue is reduced. In Odisha, you see for years together, it took place. And there is another argument which says that, regional parties will get over, regional parties will not exist, and the voter will not be able to discern the difference between national election and central and state election. I'm sorry, I think we should not. It is not fair. I'm not saying we should not, you can. But I'm saying it is not fair to doubt the acumen of the Indian voter. Please take the example of Odisha. The voter there exactly knew in the last 10 years whom they want in Delhi and whom they want in the state. And then after 10 years, a gradual change has taken place. You please look at West Bengal also. In West Bengal, the case is a little different because voting actually doesn't take place there. Election Commission has to do a lot of reform. I said the ideal election model stops at the border of West Bengal. It stops at the Kalimpong border there, and it stops at the border there. I'll come to that later. But because of reduced voter fatigue and because of a discerning, and you'll see this pattern across the country, in every state, the pattern has been often different in the state and for the center. So let us not cast doubt, let us not cast aspersion on the Indian voters' acumen. The other point is, let us remember that this simultaneous elections is not going to be rammed in, is not going to be bulldozed in the next 2 years, in the next 3 years. The high-level committee, parliament, the cabinet has given a wide time frame. You gradually prepare for it. Then, after the general election of 2029, it starts getting into action. And then it goes on to 2034, which means we have an entire decade to finally work it out. Because you are trying to bring back the system after 50 years, after 1967, after more than 50 years. So the idea of implementing the One Nation, One Election Commission is not in a hurry. It's not being done in a hurry. There is time being given. The structures are gradually being acclimatized. Options are being put forward. A time frame is being suggested. And then a gradual transition is being proposed, which is very clearly mentioned in the document of the high-level committee. And so therefore I say, please let's make a differentiation between criticism and allegation. I mentioned to you about 1983, the Election Commission of India had also mentioned simultaneous election. So had this idea been so outlandish, my point is, had this idea been so outlandish, the Election Commission of India wouldn't propose it. This idea won't keep coming up time to time in our discussions. This idea won't be mentioned by other experts over the years. And so, we need to, as you rightly said, Sanjay, we need to keep an open mind. We need to keep ourselves completely abreast of all the facts and then make an informed position, take an informed position. Now, reduction of the influence of money power and the focus on governance. Now, I'll just give you a few examples which I have already stated, but which is important in our context here. Politicians will ignore voters if there are simultaneous elections. 5 साल में एक आएगा, छोड़ दो, अब क्या जाना लोगों के पास। आप 5 साल में लोगों के पास नहीं जाओगे तो 5 साल बाद आप वापस नहीं आओगे। ये समझ में रखना चाहिए, याद रखना चाहिए। अगर इलेक्शन एक बार भी होता है 5 साल में, आपको लगता है कि मैं 5 साल के 1 महीने पहले जाऊंगा, लोग अभी बहुत सचेतन हो गए हैं। उनको मालूम है कि केंद्र में हमें किसको चाहिए, स्टेट में किसको चाहिए, क्या चाहिए, जानते हैं। बट simultaneous election will provide leaders, as I said, of various political parties more time to focus on their respective constituency and, more importantly, directly engage with citizens, with their voters. Regular election campaigns across the country demand significant attention from leaders, often requiring them to undertake campaign in various parts of the country. ये तो आप जानते हैं, ये मुझे स्पेसिफाई करने के लिए भी जरूरत नहीं है। आज ही हम लोग बैठे लिस्ट बनाए कि अगले 3 महीने में कहाँ इलेक्शंस हैं, 9 महीने में अगले कहाँ इलेक्शंस होंगे, तो आपको समझ में आ जाएगा कि अगले अभी से शुरू करके अगले 9 महीने तक सारे इलेक्शंस हैं वेरियस स्टेट्स। तो इसलिए वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन will allow leaders to dedicate more attention to citizens in their constituencies and states, and it will allow national leaders to effectively engage with their local constituents. The other point I made was, on numerous occasions when Lok Sabha and Legislative Assembly elections in a state have been conducted simultaneously, voters have given different verdicts. आप लिस्ट बनाइए, you make a list, at least 5 states you will be able to say where voters have given different verdict. For Delhi, years together voters have given different verdict. As far as I remember from 1997, all Lok Sabha seats would be won by the Bharatiya Janata Party. In 1997 it was the Congress, Sheila Dikshit ji's government, all seats, assembly seats would be won by them. Later on, all Lok Sabha seats again continuously for the last 25 years won by BJP, and then the assembly seats were won by AAP, the new party. So this is just one example. You look at Odisha also. Increasing vote tally of the BJP in Lok Sabha and continuous governance of BJD in the assembly. It went on for years, for nearly 25 years, and then organically it shifted, it changed. Because at a certain point the voters perhaps decided, okay, no, we want to now go in for the national party. Nothing is granted. Nothing is granted in this kind of system of election. Unless you engage and you can deliver, you are accountable, and you are governance oriented, nothing is granted. So a leader cannot take anything for granted. And in the all-party meeting that took place in 2019, because people say that regional parties are going to suffer, regional parties will get dissolved. Regional parties, if they have to contest election once in 5 years, will not be compelled to continuously amass resources in order to continuously fight elections. And the best part is, in the all-party meeting, out of 19 parties in attendance, 16 parties favored the idea of simultaneous election, and these included regional parties such as the NCP, JDU, YSR Congress, BRS, LJP, SAD, Shiromani Akali Dal, NPP, and the BJD. Already most of the regional parties that really matter supported simultaneous election. And so therefore, I can continuously keep giving you more and more examples. I think I should leave it to you because the problem is one who keeps speaking, he feels very nice listening to his own voice. But those who have to keep listening to him, it is a little taxing for them beyond a certain point. So I think we should at certain point stop. But I think one nation, one election will lead to single party rule. I want to end with this. There are many questions which have risen, and the high-level committee has also answered. One nation, one election will not lead to any change in the incumbent party in any state. There is no reason to believe that the same party will win the elections at both the levels, state and center, if elections are held simultaneously. And ample examples are there for that. So, friends, I just wanted to appeal to you that we are at a very crucial point in our history, especially in the history of India as a democracy, in India's democratic history. And I believe, therefore, any nation which is at the crossroads has to take a historic decision. We were at the crossroad, we took a historic decision to form the Constituent Assembly. We were at the crossroad, a historic decision was taken to resist and to defeat emergency. We were at a historic moment, a historic decision were taken on a number of occasions. This also is a very crucial moment in our history. And let us remember that the Constitution, as Babasaheb Ambedkar had said, the Constitution is what we will make out of it. Constitution is an instrument. It is an instrument to ensure that India's democracy, democratic fabric, democratic spirit is safeguarded. It is protected. And that Constitution is what we will make out of it. And therefore, that Constitution also will ensure the kind of government that we want. Can the election process, the electoral process be transformed in such a manner which makes it not only smooth, which ensures that participatory democracy is really participating, and that people in their full vigor, in their full energy, actually go and vote for that which they want, for that government which they want. I think these are the dimensions and aspects that we need to consider when we debate and discuss this. Now, I just want to end with your neighboring state, West Bengal. There was a time when all of you know the kind of electoral violence that would take place at all levels in various states. That electoral violence is history in most states except West Bengal. And in West Bengal, election has become an industry. I say it is the election economy. So more the election, the more some people survive. The more the elections, the more some people run that industry. So you have state assembly elections, it is an industry. You have the panchayat election, it is an industry. You have the municipal elections, it is an industry. And this industry is very interesting. This industry is not only about money. This industry is about bombs, it is about pistols, it is about... You have an entire squad which is trained to capture booths. You have an entire squad. Nowadays you can't capture booths, but you can go and intimidate voters in the villages. They don't go and vote. Because the booths nowadays are surrounded by the central forces. Booth capturing has become now relatively, in West Bengal still capturing takes place, but it is relatively reduced. Relatively reduced because the central forces surround the booth. But if you don't allow voters to come up to the booth, what happens? I remember in 2021 in the assembly elections, in my assembly elections, I went around in the last 2 hours, I went around the constituency urging voters to go and vote. I would tell them, please go and vote whomever you want, but go out and vote. Don't sit and don't go out. They would tell me, sir, आप तो बोल के चले जा रहे हैं, अपनी तो बोले चले जाच्छे हैं, बाद में हमारा दुकान आकर तोड़ेंगे, हमारा घर तोड़ेंगे, हमको थ्रेट करेंगे, सोशली बॉयकॉट करेंगे. And imagine this happening every time, 2021. Then 1.5 years you have 2024 elections coming. Then again now 9 months you have 2026 elections coming. Then you have the panchayat elections coming. You have the municipal elections coming. In a place, in a town like Baharampur. How far from here? Just about, you go from here to Bagdogra. From Bagdogra to Siliguri, Baharampur is 7 hours. From here to Bagdogra, Siliguri is 5 hours. Let's take it. So you can take a break and reach within a day Baharampur. Imagine Baharampur town, one of the most important town in central Bengal, which is a connecting town with North Bengal and Northeast and South Bengal. In Baharampur town municipal election, one of my friends is a booth agent. He's a teacher in a college, in the women's college, a teacher. Wonderful human being. Suddenly he sees a revolver pointed at him. Hey, walk out. He walks out. And this was in the last municipal elections. So I am again not speaking here, I say I am not speaking here as a person who is identified with a certain ideology. I am speaking to you here as an observer, as a researcher, as a research scholar who has gathered a lot of data and document about these aspects of violent elections that take place in your neighboring state. Now what will happen is, simultaneous election will close this industry. Once in 5 years. No income, because no continuous election. What happens to the revolvers and bombs? 5 years you manufacture, they will be lying idle. And after 5 years they will not be in a situation to be used. And because it is simultaneous election, the entire focus, all resources, all deployment at once is taken place. And not continuously scattered all around. So I think there are various issues. There is sufficient time. Let the debate evolve. Let an evolution of thinking take place. Let all situations be examined. And I'm sure there is something extremely positive awaiting India's democracy. It will only strengthen India's democracy, and it will prepare a generation which will be confident, which will be focused to lead this country ahead and to see it emerge as a great power. Thank you so much for your extreme patience. I'm extremely grateful to you for affording me this opportunity to share my thoughts, and that you have listened so patiently. I'm extremely grateful for that as well. Thank you so much.